Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear Review. This is another installment of the If I Could Just Keep One, in this case, military-style watch. So right in front of you, you have 14 watches that I have that I absolutely love the military-style watch. This is my favorite style watch of all time. As you can see, there's 14 of them. And this style watch, to me, speaks to so many different characteristics that I love. The clarity, the simplicity, the size of the watch. Now, granted, some of the field watches, the vintage field watches, were much smaller in diameter, and the pilot watches were much larger in diameter. But these modern versions of these watches are great. There's one watch out here that's almost a one-to-one reissue, and that is the Bulova A15 right here in the far right. If you look at the original that was set out there in 1944 compared to this one, they are almost, spitting images of each other. You also have the Hamilton Khaki Field back here. This has the vintage or the heritage of the Hamilton Khaki Field, or the Hamilton Field watch that was used in World War II. And there's some other watches like the Flieger back here, Hruodland Pilot, which is also a Flieger style watch, that has that German pilot watch feel to it. But there's some other modern things that have been attached to it. So this isn't intended to say that these are hardcore military issue watches. If that was the case, I would have actual military issued watches here. So this is a little bit more of a contemporary take on it, and we're just going to have some fun with this. Like if I was going to pick one of these out of the 14, whittle it down to one, which breaks my heart a little bit because I've spent so much time with the different styles and qualities about these watches. So go ahead and pick one of these watches. See if your pick matches up with my pick in the end. Put in the comments down below what you think the watch is going to be, and let's have some fun with this. We're going to take out a bunch of these watches based off of some categories that are a little bit more objective, and then the last thing, we're going to have a couple more objectives once we whittle it down, and we'll get it down to just one. And I can tell you right now, it was not the one I was expecting, and frankly, it wasn't the one I was hoping was going to do this. So you could be assured that I didn't fix this at the beginning and say, well, I want this one to be the one because I like this one the most. I let the numbers speak for themselves, okay? As a guy who's been trained in research, I let that happen. So let the data tell you what's going on. Don't try to manipulate the data. All right, here we go. Here are the categories, legibility. And this is a two-part legibility thing. One is the dial, the other is the hands. How legible is the dial? Typically, we're looking at the numbers. We're looking at the hour markers, the minute track, all that stuff. How legible is the dial? Second is going to be the hands. How distinguishing is the hour hand from the minute hand? Some of these watches do a really good job. Others are not quite as good. We're splitting hairs on this to begin with because we all know the hour hand is shorter than the minute hand. So they are distinguished. But add a little bit more to it and see, some of these watches actually have a better hour hand, I think, as far as design goes, that really sets it apart from the minute hand. Next up is the minute track and the 24-hour markers. Having one or both, if you have both, the watch gets a higher score. If they have one, they get, some of the points. If they don't have either, and there's a few of these watches out here that have no minute mark and has no 24-hour markers on the dial, which, for someone who's going back and forth between different conversations, whether it's civilian and military or law enforcement, that kind of thing, the 24-hour markers on the dial is actually very helpful. The crystal, sapphire gets the highest score, mineral crystal gets the second highest, and then acrylic gets the lowest score. Strap and bracelet, these are all going to score. This is almost a gimme, but there is a watch out there that just has a terrible strap or bracelet, and I shouldn't say terrible. We're splitting hairs here. It's not very good. All right. Water resistance. 50 meters is the standard for water resistance, and from there, if it has more than that, it gets another point. If it has less than that, it gets one less point. And you'd be surprised the number of watches out here that have really kind of poor water resistance. Now, the reason why I put water resistance, you got to protect the inside parts of the watch. So water resistance, I think, is a higher standard than it was back in the day, back in the mid 20th century. So that's the standard for this one. Movement, ease of use for the movement. Low maintenance, low attention. You don't have to spend a lot of your attentive time to the movement itself. So obviously quartz is going to be the top on the list on that one. But also your automatics are going to do really well because frankly, if you have an accurate automatic watch, you don't have to do hardly anything with it, right? So your manual wind is probably going to be the one that takes the hit on that. Light and lume. Yeah, light, there is a watch out there that has a light, and I'll hint as to which one that is. All right, and lume. Now this was, again, vintage-wise, was not a huge deal. Pilot watches more so than field watches, and actually field watches, it serves, it's a negative thing because you don't want the enemy to see your lumed watch. It gives your position away. So lights are preferable nowadays versus lume. But lume overall, the best lume for the longest period of time, the brightest lume is what I'm going for, and we're actually going to use that as a tiebreaker at the very end. So those are the categories. Let's pull out the watches that just didn't score well. First off, it is the Zelos Aurora. This watch tries to be a field watch, but it really isn't. This is more of a sport watch. I'm not sure why they decided to call this a field watch, but they did. Put it in the category. I'm going to go with what the manufacturer intends it to be and then rate it accordingly. And so this one, the score on this one, it took a ding because of the lack of numbers, the lack of the 24-hour, the minute track. It has the minute track. It doesn't have the 24-hour track. The appeal of this watch, the visual appeal as a military style watch, just isn't there. It's more of a dressy style watch. The Lorus is another one. We're going to take this one out because it really struggled with, let's see, the handset. Not quite as distinguishing between the hour hand and the minute hand. It doesn't have the minute track around the outside. The mineral crystal is another one. And then also the strap on this, it's too short. And as a result, this keeper slides around way too easily on here. It just doesn't hold its own very well. Next up is going to be the Caravelle. The big deal on this one is the 30 meters of water resistance. Now the Caravelle, this company is owned by Bulova. Okay, but the Caravelle just took a ding on that. It doesn't have the 24-hour track. Those are two big dings to this watch. I love this watch. All these watches I absolutely love. They're all important to me. I have a hard time getting rid of them, and I think I'm gonna have to get rid of a few of them. But anyway, they're just I love them. So the Bulova Pilot. Now it's like this is the one that has like the one-to-one military style to it. But with 30 meters of water resistance, it's just, and both this and the Caravelle, they're made by Bulova. Is 30 meters of water resistance trustworthy? Can you trust 30 meters of water resistance? Probably. But I want 50. Like 50 to me is just it's just a better standard. It's like that redundancy. 30 is good, but if I can get another 20 meters out of this, it's even less likely to get water inside the case. So I love this watch a lot. The design is just so unique. And it has so much heritage to the actual pilot watch that was almost issued in 1944. The San Martin. Yeah, this is pretty obvious. This is more of a dress watch. I love it because of the Art Deco. I'm a sucker for Art Deco. I love that design period. And it's a great looking watch, but it doesn't have the numbers. The lume on this is not very good. There's a lot of things about this that are just not great. But overall, I mean, it's got, sapphire. Let's see. Oh, the crystal is also mineral crystal. I thought it was sapphire. But the handset, it's okay. Water resistance is really good. It's 200 meters of water resistance. So, I mean, there's some things about each of these watches that are strengths and some of them that are weaknesses. All right, what else do we have here? I've got, the Hruodland back here, the Pilot, the Flieger style. Great styling watch. One of the things I don't like about this watch is they have such a big dial, and the numbers proportionally just don't match the size of the dial. I wish the numbers were just a little bit bigger on the hour markers. Doesn't have the 24-hour track, doesn't have the minute track labeled. So those are some things about it that it took a ding on. Also, it's a hand-wound movement, so maintaining this watch takes more effort. Splitting hairs, guys. Takes more effort than an automatic or a quartz movement. So those are the ones that scored the lowest. We've got one more watch that just arrived as I was editing this. So I haven't even changed out of my work clothes. I got this watch out of the box. I'm putting this into the video. It's the Bertucci DX3. Great little field watch, quartz movement, a lot of great things going for it. High contrast hands and dial. Great legibility on the numbers. The 12 and the, let me see here, the 12, 3, 6, 9 are all much larger than the other hour indicators or indices on there, which I really love. However, there's no minute markers on the minute track, so it doesn't get the full points on that, like a bunch of other watches that didn't have that as well. Also, the, let's see, what the crystal is, a mineral crystal. Not my favorite. It works, but it's, you know, sapphire is preferable, especially if it's going to be my one and only field watch. The water resistance is 50 meters, and then the last thing is, oh, the handset. The handset, the hour hand, is just not quite differentiated enough from the minute hand. Minor thing. So out of 24 points, it gets 20 points. It's not going to make the initial cut, so it doesn't change the overall pick of this this video as I was editing it. So thank goodness for that, so I don't have to go back and redo the whole thing. But great watch. Bertucci DX3. It's less than 70, right around 70 bucks or just under 70 bucks if you kind of shop around for it. I actually like it. I'm going to put this thing through the ringer and do a review on this watch. I haven't done a review on it yet, but upcoming will be a review. So back to your regular scheduled program. And what we have left is a really good selection in my book. I think these are great watches to have, all right, as your second round contenders. When you look at these watches, these are great military styled watches, I think. You would not go wrong at all with any of these. And as far as, like, for me, picking one of these as being my quote unquote everyday military style watch, no problem picking any one of these. Now, the next category in this is going to be, because it's going to be the one and it has to fit all kinds of different situations, clothing being one of them. Wintertime, summertime, spring, fall, the different style clothings, you know, maybe casual, semi-casual, semi-formal if possible. Some of these would work well for semi-formal. So with that in mind, we're going to go with thickness, the height off the wrist, because that is one of the limiting factors as far as shirts with a cuff on it that you got to keep in mind. So anything that's lower to the wrist, lower profile, is going to be preferable for those reasons. And again, is this a military thing? Not necessarily. Although the lower profile keeps the watch from banging into things, catching on things, scratching the crystal if it's not a sapphire crystal. And sapphire is not like this, you know, unscratchable surface, but it's far more resistant to scratches than acrylic or even mineral. So low profile is preferable. That means the Hamilton Khaki Chronograph. This is what happened to this watch in the, if I could have just one chronograph, it got pulled out because of the thickness of the watch. It is one of my favorite military style watches that's also a chronograph, but it just doesn't cut the mustard when it comes to the height. So next up is the Citizen Nighthawk, same deal, pretty chunky watch. We're going to take that watch out as well. The Kingsbury. This is the one I wanted to win. I love this watch. Absolutely love it. Slab-sided case. It really just a fantastic watch. When you look at this, a little sector dial, a little crosshair in the middle. You know, there's so many things about this watch that is just great. But the thickness is going to take that watch out, unfortunately. Yeah, the Nodus Blackbird. It's surprisingly kind of a thick watch. You've got a case that juts out towards the bottom. You know, the case back is a little bit further down. It's surprisingly a chunkier watch, relatively speaking. Okay, we're comparing it with others out there. And the last one that's not going to make the cut is the Pagani 1717. This really is a great looking sport watch. Not necessarily a pilot watch, although they refer to the Longines Spirit, which is, this is the homage to the Longines Spirit, is referred to as a pilot watch. Not necessarily a military pilot watch, but has that, I guess, label to it. That's pretty much all they mentioned to it. So I threw it in here just to see how it would do. It fared pretty well, if you ask me, when it comes down to clarity and all these other characteristics. 200 meters of water resistance, this watch. Pagani 1717, 200 meters of water resistance. I think that's fantastic. So now we're down to the last three. All right, last three. Which one would you choose? The last category that's going to separate these is going to be lume, but a higher standard of lume. Which of these three has the best lume overall, relatively speaking? So compared to each other, which one of these has better lume? SWC, multiple layers. The Baltany, I think if you've seen any reviews on the internet, you know the Baltany has awesome lume. The MDC, most people haven't heard of the MDC. This is a full lume dial, holds its own with just about any full lume dial out there. There's certainly some great ones like the Signum Cuda that are just going to blow it away. But the Signum Cuda blows everybody away. So this one holds its own. Of these three, which am I going to choose? it's going to be the SWC Bunker. This is the one that has the best lume of the bunch. It lasts the longest. Overall, titanium case, you know, great water resistance. Let's see, the water resistance on the SWC is 100 meters of water resistance. Legibility is fantastic. Handset's great. A little bit of red on the end of the second hand. To me, this watch is outstanding. All these watches, I love all these watches, but the SWC was the one that I didn't think was going to be near the top of the list, but it turns out it was, and it is. So I'm going with the SWC. Put in the comments down below what you think of that. If you have other watches I didn't include in this, put those down there as well. I'm really looking forward to the conversations around this because there's so many watches that I had out here. I think it's going to generate some conversation around the field military pilot watch stuff. All right. So appreciate your time. My name is Tim. This has been a Real Ideal Gear Review. We'll catch you guys next time.